guys, it's Dean from Electronisounds. I've just updated my Beatmaker 3 to the latest version 3.05, and I've got the latest version of iOS 11.01.01 or something. Let's compose something inside of Beatmaker 3, guys.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
This is my brand new, brand new to me, refurbished iPad Air 2. And this is a brand new install of Beatmaker 3, the new version 3.05. And we're going to start with a new session. This is a brand new install, so I don't have any samples or any presets installed here whatsoever. I figured that'd be a really good way to start. And what we'll do is we're going to start by loading up the Summer Drums bank. Check the audio level here. Turn it down just a tiny bit. Okay, cool. Now, out of the drum kits that you can get with Beatmaker 3 for free, this was my favorite one. I started doing a little bit of editing on this kit, and I'd like to show you a few things. And I'd like to preface this by saying that there's no, I'm not trying to, point out any flaws in the programmer who made this. I just want to, show you guys a couple of things. If you zoom in on the kick drum sample here, here's the sample. If you zoom in on the beginning, you'll see that it doesn't actually start on a zero crossing, which is a total no-no for samples. You're gonna want that to start on a zero crossing, and so if you go into select mode and you select just the very beginning of that sample and you do a process and a fade in, so now it's starting on a zero crossing, you'll hear that it really changes the sound like completely, and we lose the transient punch that was on the beginning of that sample. Let me undo that and so you can hear again. Really punchy at the beginning, but this is incorrect. It needs to start on a zero crossing. I cannot stress this enough. I wouldn't actually use this in any music, guys. And if you fade that in, it changes the sound entirely. So rather than sit here and try to resculpt this drum kit, guys, I figured the first thing we'll do is just download a free drum kit and start working with that. I really wanted to work with the factory sounds because I know that everybody has access to those sounds, but I really just can't, see myself working with that kit in particular. So what let's do is let's just, let's just load up Safari, because I know everybody's got Safari. I usually use Chrome, but, and what let's do is let's just go to my website here, electronisounds.com. And the first thing that'll come up is a free drum kit that I'm giving out. By no means do you need to get my drum kit, but this is just, a free drum kit that's easily accessible inside of Beatmaker 3. So I'll just punch in my email address here, Electronisounds, and submit. And here's the free drum kit for Beatmaker 3. And we will click here to download. You need to have Dropbox installed in your iPad if you want to do what I'm doing here. We'll click the three buttons on the upper right, and we'll choose Export. And now we will open in. And if we slide this over, we can copy to Beatmaker 3. And now it says unzipped content available in the imports directory. So let's open the browser and let's go to the imports directory, Electronisounds Copper Kit, and there it is. Let's go ahead and load that bank. Cool. So we'll go ahead and start writing something with this kit. So you've seen how I imported it into Beatmaker 3 and how it is a 100% free drum kit. I'm just going to leave the tempo at the default of 90. I'm just going to hit record without making any adjustments whatsoever, and we'll see what happens. slow. Let's bring this BPM up to like say 104 BPM, and let's put the global swing up to 20% because that's sort of a personal preference of mine. Get that extra flavor, extra funk in the swing. Cool. So there's the pattern we just played in, and you saw me just pull the bar out there, okay, and we will make sure that the little white circle is highlighted there so that it's going to loop for us, and we'll just play that back. This is really a higher BPM thing. I think I'm playing this more like half time. Let's try 128 here. Yeah, that's about right. Cool. Excellent. So let's see here. Let's make this an 8-bar pattern right off the jump here. Let's click duplicate. Zoom out a little here. Okay. Let's touch the highlight tool here and highlight both patterns. Let's click merge. It's going to put those patterns in, one long 8-bar pattern now, and we'll drag the loop brace out so that we're repeating the full 8 bars. I'm going to change the cursor back over to the select tool, and we'll make sure that our pattern is selected, and we'll hit edit, and now we can see the MIDI notes for our pattern here. Okay, let's see if we can make this a little bit more interesting of a drum groove here. I'm just going to play it back, and we'll just sort of experiment. You'll notice I'm not using any controllers at all today, and the point of this was that I really wanted, as much as possible, to show you guys, what can be done with Beatmaker 3 just with the iPad alone, how you really don't need a bunch of extra stuff. We've already downloaded a brand new drum kit for free, and we're just, going without any MIDI controllers or anything like that today. So let's experiment with these. There's a whole bunch of other sounds here. Let's see if we can find something else that we can, maybe add to this drum groove. Oh, cool. I like to put a clap sort of on every other snare. It sort of, it emphasizes an A and a B part to your beat, per se, and really helps, push that forward momentum that I keep stressing in these videos. Cool. So I'll just continue playing the beat, and we'll tap some other sounds. And actually, right off the jump, we know we can add a crash to the downbeat. That's kind of a go-to for me. Cool. So again, I'll just play it and see what we can, tap out over it. Oh, I really like this vinyl crackle. Might be fun to get kind of a gritty feel to this beat. So let's hit record, and then, like, say at the downbeat of every measure, I'll just add that vinyl crackle in, and we'll get sort of, dirty record feel throughout the beat. Cool. That's a big snare. Let's put in sort of a second downbeat impact on the beginning of measure 5 with this noise burst here. And 2, 3, 4. Again, that'll sort of just keep the listener interested, and I'm doing this because it's the international symbol for forward momentum. Let's see here. Well, that's kind of a nice little shaker we can add. Cool. And then maybe just bring that shaker down in the mix a little bit. We'll just tap the pad and then, you know, adjust the gain. You do that with all the sounds. Just tap the pad, adjust the gain. Except if there's like a number here, for instance, like you'll see that number 5, that represents that volume is assigned to a macro. So if you were to, in the bottom left right here, click this macro button, you'll see that the copper kit itself has quite a bit of macros assigned. And then we would, like for instance, to adjust the volume on this sound, you know, it's assigned to macro 5. This is like pad number 1. So you would go here and you would find, you know, pad number 1, there it is, gain, and you can see that it's set to minimum, you know, of 0, and if you turn the knob, it'll go down to negative 6.7. Well, if you wanted a lower volume on this in the mix, you would just, you know, take this minimum volume and make it lower. But we don't need to do that for this sound, so I'll put this back to 0. Fantastic. Okay, and we'll close those macros out and bring our pads back up again. I'd say we have a pretty, you know, workable beat here that we can add something to. So I'm going to pause for a second, and we'll figure out what we're going to add to this next.
Dean's here. Hey, Dean. Dean Daughters, the ultimate in music production on BM3.
Okay, guys, I really do want to show you as much as I can of what you might be able to get out of these factory sounds. So what we're going to do, excuse me here, is we're going to add a new bank, and we're going to load up the soul keys that come with Beatmaker 3. And before I touch anything, this is a pretty loud preset. So we're going to go into the sampler page on the soul keys here, and we're literally just going to turn this gain from negative 6. We're going to turn it way down, guys, to negative 20, like way down. And we'll adjust that as necessary in just a moment. So these are some pretty funky soul keys, as it says here. And you'll notice that we're working with multiple banks. We've actually got a playable instrument here rather than just one bank of one shots, which I've been showing you. So this is a melodic bank, right? And I could sit here for the next hour or so trying to come up with a really interesting melodic part for this. But playing really fantastic melodic parts on keys like the little pads like this isn't really my strong suit. So what I've done to compensate for that is I've found an app that's called ChordPolyPad, and I use this quite a bit. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to, literally program chords, and then all we have to do is hit one pad, and it plays back this really complicated chord that, whereas I could take the time to learn this fingering right now, I certainly wouldn't be able to play this funky groove in real time. I just don't have those sort of skills. I'm more of a drummer than a keyboard player, guys. So this is a bit of a cheat, and I highly recommend it if the same thing applies to you with your keyboard playing skills. You'll notice I haven't really done much of a setup here at all, and we're already playing the soul keys inside of Beatmaker 3, and that's really, convenient and fantastic. If you need to make any adjustments, if you're not, immediately referencing this, the bank in Beatmaker 3, what you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that, the drums are not up, but rather the bank that you'd like to play on is up. Okay, we'll double click, and then we'll just, bring this app up. Now, if this is playing the internal piano instead of Beatmaker 3, you'll just click on MIDI and you'll just set that to Beatmaker 3 instead of internal and click close. And now we're just playing Beatmaker 3, guys. So check this out, right? If I tell the pre-roll to be 4 bars and I hit record and I count while I switch over to the other app, we should be able to just start recording in some funky chords, like no problem. So we're going to do that. I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to be counting that 4-bar pre-roll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. have it, guys. Already looping. How cool is that? Turn that metronome off. You can see here. Turn that metronome off. No? Try again. There we go. That we're peaking a little bit on the main out. Just listening to see what I'm going to adjust here for that. I think what we'll do right off the jump, guys, is do a save and do not a quick save, but a save as rather. Let's just give this a name. We'll call this, you know, funk, soul, keys, demo or something, right? We're definitely going to copy samples. I would recommend that you always highlight that, you know, copy samples. I'm not really sure about this save bank separately feature yet. Take a little bit more time and figure out how I want to approach that with my sessions and whatnot. But doing it this way, now it's embedding the samples from the soul keys and from the copper drum kit inside the session folder, which is pretty cool. Great. So we'll bring open, excuse me, the effects tab down here. And what I'd like to do is click here and bring up the soul keys. Oh, they've already got some stuff on them. Great. So what we can do is, well, let's take a look while this is playing, and I'll adjust this to better suit our mix here. Yeah, I want more of a, you know, sweet keys, not a dirty keys. So right off the jump, we're just going to delete this overdrive. I don't need it. I'm not sure why there's this weird bump in the lows of these keys. Not digging that at all. So we're going to delete that. Cool. Cool. But I do EQ pretty much everything. So we'll add an effect here. And it's going to be the 6-band EQ. Okay, and I like to put the EQ before my effects and whatnot. So for instance, if we're going to take out some lows in the sound, that we're not going to push muddy lows through reverb and then take, you know, those lows out. What we'll do is take those lows out before it hits the reverb. And here's how we're going to do that, guys. We're going to move up the 6-band EQ, move up, and now we'll make it the very first thing, because we don't need to compress frequencies that we don't want either. So it makes a lot more sense to have the EQ as the first thing in your mix. So this is a new version of new install of Beatmaker 3. I'm just going to take a second and adjust these numbers to my sort of, I have a sort of a go-to on the EQ that I use. We'll make that a low cut. Or rather a high pass. Take this down to 35. Bear with me while I set up my default settings here, guys, and maybe you can get something out of this as well. That should be a low shelf. Start that at -5. Cool. And then this will be at 500. This is the trance hole that I talk about in a lot of my videos, the 500 you know, kilohertz frequency, and I will often remove about half a decibel of that, kind of by default. I mean, half a decibel is nothing, guys, but when you've been doing this forever, you know, sometimes you really start to notice those, you know, half a decibel differences. So for now, we're just going to call this, we'll save that. I use that sort of numbers quite a bit. We'll call this temp for now so that we can move forward with the session. Okay, great. So what we're going to do, guys, is basically, whoops, what just happened there? Somehow I lost the EQ, but I was able to do an undo and get it back. Fantastic. What I just want to do is just to cut some of the lows out of this sound. So we'll, you know, bring that bottom one up to about 65. And then about 100 hertz, which is pretty low frequency. I'll pull some more of those lows out. Pull some more of those mids out too. I think I'll get a new one here at about 350. We'll make this a low pass as well. I mean, excuse me, a low shelf. And then bring that down. Now what we've done, guys, is essentially carve out some of the lows from the soul keys, which is allowing them to sit next to the drums a little nicer without conflicting in those low frequencies. Okay, and in doing so, you'll see here that it looks like we fixed the peaking on the main out, except for when that noise hit occurred, it peaked again. So what let's do is let's just take our main out down a decibel, but let's also go back to the drums bank, and on that noise hit that we saw it peak the volume just there, we'll just bring this back a couple decibels in the mix. Cool. And I would suggest at this point, that we save, and we'll just do a quick save at this point because we've already given our project a name. I hope you guys are finding some of this information useful. We will take a look at the soul keys here. I've noticed that on the bank, the send is all the way up here, but I don't have anything on the sends. We haven't put anything there. So we'll go ahead and turn that down. We'll also double click the soul keys and just make sure that literally everything inside of here is pulled down, because we don't want anything going to, we'll double click that again to get back to our mixer. We don't need anything being sent to these because we don't have anything there. That said though, let's go ahead and put something there. If we click the effects tab, and then up here, if we decide, we'd like to put something on aux 1, I'll go ahead and put a like a stereo delay here. And what I like to do with both of the effects ends, I'll put like a reverb on send 2. In fact, let's just do that now on auxiliary 2. Let's add the M-verb. Cool. And then we'll go back to aux 1 here. And I'll put a an EQ before, again, we'll do the move up. I'll put it before the delay and before the reverb, so that I'm cutting off anything that's a low frequency from hitting into those, because all that's going to do is create mud in your mix, and you don't want mud in the mix. So what we'll do, guys, is we'll take this and we'll turn it to a high pass. Take this back down to 35. I wish I could set the default, because 35 is my go-to, not 50. And I will take this and I'll put this at, like, I don't know, for this one we'll do 700. We're going to cut out any frequency below 700 hertz from entering into our stereo delay or entering into our reverb here. We'll do the same thing. So we'll add an effect, put the EQ in. We're going to move this up so that it hits the EQ before it hits the reverb, right? And then we'll turn this to a high pass, and we'll change this number to 700 hertz. So anything below 700, and we'll put this back down to 35. So anything below 700 hertz, those low frequencies where like the bass line and the kick drum and the snare drum are residing in the mix, it's going to kind of cut those frequencies out here. We'll go ahead and label these. We'll hold this down, rename. This is our delay. Whoops, delay. This is our delay, and hold that down, rename. This is our reverb. Okay, so now in the mix we can start sending things to this. I haven't, made any settings on the reverb or the delay. The default settings should probably be fine on the reverb for now. And on the delay, that's probably fine for now as well. You will notice that on the delay that they do have a high pass filter built in, and I do use that as well. You might wonder why we're using both. Sometimes I just use both. It is what it is. I might touch that down a little bit there. Cool. So what let's do is play the mix back, and then on the soul keys, I'll give a little bit of, send 1 and send 2, and we'll get a little bit of reverb and delay in the mix on those. And how I might set those is I might turn it up like way more than I need to, so I can really hear the effect, and then I'll just dial that back in the mix until it's pleasant. Okay, so the delay is pretty subtle on these, so we'll do about 12 o'clock. Now let's try some reverb. That's delicious. Let's put that quite a bit higher. We'll do about 2 o'clock. And now the keys are starting to have a bit of a life of their own there. And we can maybe bring them up a little. Nice. Let's check how we're doing over here on the mix side of things. If you tap on the number, if you tap on the number right above where it says peak, it resets that. So for instance, if you have a channel that's in the red and been clipping, if you make some adjustments and then tap these numbers again, it resets it so that you can now check again to see if there's any clipping going on. If you get like red stuff here and you're over the 0 decibel, you need to make some adjustments, guys, because you don't want clipping. Often to, help with that, I'll put a limiter on the output of the master bus. I use the limiter from Amazing Noises all the time. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I just want to use the stuff that comes with Beatmaker 3 so that you guys have the exact same tools that I'm working with. Okay, what let's do is, since we now have the delay and the reverb in, let's go ahead and save again. We'll do a quick save. Cool. And let's double tap on the drum kit and maybe add some reverb and delay to like the hi-hats and snare. Typically we'll leave the reverb and delay off of some of the lower frequency elements like the kick drum, because you're mostly just going to create extra mud in the mix if you start putting reverb on the low frequencies, and you don't really want that. So looks like the new version finally has the pad numbers here, so you can see this is pad number 1, pad number 2. That's really handy because sometimes the sample names are quite a bit longer than what shows here. So what I'll do is I'll play the mix, and then we remember that send 1 is our delay and send 2 is our reverb, and I'll just adjust some of those, and we'll get a little bit more body to the mix here with some effects. Here's our shaker. Let's put some little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb. Here's our big clap, so how about a little bit of reverb on that bad boy? Open up the effects, take a look at this delay. I'm not really hearing this, and I'm trying to figure out why. There we go. It's just subtle, which is good. We don't need huge amounts of delay and reverb, but something to help flesh out these sounds is always welcome. So I put a little bit of reverb here on the closed hi-hat, and we'll put a little bit of reverb, just a little bit of reverb, and just a little bit of reverb on our main snare. Just our clap. Just checking, if we have other sounds going, we'll, take a note there. This is that vinyl noise. Sure, we'll put a little bit of reverb on there. Just a little bit. I mean, these are really subtle adjustments, We'll put some delay and some reverb on that noise impact there. And I think that's all the sounds we used for this groove and the drums so far. Yeah, but you can hear the groove is starting to sound pretty nice. We'll go ahead and hit quick save again. Now that we've put those effects on the mix and whatnot, let's go ahead and go back to, whoops, excuse me. We'll pull this over here and double tap on the first pad of our drum kit, which puts us back to the main mixer view, and we'll just play again and check that our levels are still in line and we're not getting any clipping. Yeah, we're totally in line level-wise, looking good. I feel that these keys are still just a little bit muddy, so we're going to do a little bit of EQ on those soul keys. We'll take the lows down a little bit more. Nice. And maybe around know, maybe around 5,000 hertz, 5,000 kilohertz rather. Maybe do a little bit, tiny bit of a really subtle boost, and pull some of those, you know, high frequencies back into this sound. I normally wouldn't boost something by this much. The sound is a little like lo-fi, maybe. So I'm trying to kind of give it some of the frequencies back. Maybe we'll put this to about 5, and then above here, maybe we'll change this to about 12,000. Whoops. And make this a high shell filter. Whoa, get that weird resonance down. And just give that a tiny little bit of a boost as well, to push those. That sounds a little bit cleaner. You really want to be careful when you're boosting frequencies. See if I can show you guys here. I have you know, a reference that I'm looking at. I'm not just blindly boosting frequencies. So be careful when you're boosting. Let's see if I can get this back into the set here. Okay, cool. Right. I think also maybe what let's do is put a little bit of a sidechain to the kick and the snare on this keys channel. So we'll add a dynamics processor, and I'll put that above the delay and the reverb that are currently on the channel. So we'll do move up. This is our dynamics, and we'll do move up. Now we're sitting next to another dynamics processor, which is in fact being used as a compressor right now. We're going to use this as a sidechain, so we'll set this to my kind of go-to sidechain settings, which is a ratio of 4:1, and an attack of 0, or you know, as close to 0 as you can get. That's the most important thing here, is that the attack is down, because you want the sidechain to happen at the exact millisecond that the kick drum, you know, hits. We're trying to do a little bit of ducking here, so that the kick drum punches through the keys, and that the keys are a little bit less muddy sounding in the mix. So again, here's our sidechain that we're using at this one here, and then the sidechain input, I'll click that, and we'll find the kick drum by, here's our drum kit, and I'll select a pad. Our kick drum is on the first pad, and it's called Dusty Dusty. Now if I play the mix, we'll see the sidechain stuff happening here. Perfect. Now we would adjust the threshold if we didn't see this, or if it wasn't sounding to our liking. And what we can do is we can do a save as a temp here. I kind of have a temp 2, means, you know, that's something that I can just write over at any time, but it'll save me a little bit of time in a session, and you'll see what I mean, because we're going to sidechain to the snare as well on the keys. So we'll add another dynamics processor. We are going to move that up again, pull down, and we're going to move that up again. So now we have it above the reverb and above the delay. We want to sidechain before the effects, not after in this case. And instead of having to reset those numbers again, I can just load now temp 2 and change from this the input of the kick drum to the input of the snare drum rather. And it's not in order here for some reason, so let's go find it. Alright, it's on, you know, pad 2, and it's called snare SN, drop in the bucket. So we will take a look here. Okay, great. There's our first one, and here's our second sidechain, which we're looking to assign to the snare drum. And we'll just find the name. There it is, 2 snare drop in the bucket. And we'll press play, and we should see that, you know, it's happening here, the sidechain. And we'll adjust if it's not, or we'll adjust if we don't like the way it sounds. Okay, I have a whole video about sidechaining. I'll put a link to that, and you guys can scope that out if this is a little bit confusing as to why we're doing it or how I'm doing it. But basically, this is just allowing the kick and the snare drum to sort of, this is really gentle sidechaining, guys. It's nothing extreme, not real big EDM pumping or anything like that. Just a gentle technique to help these sounds cut through, and to not have the soul keys be quite as muddy in the mix. I think we've already gone a little bit longer than I was expecting to go here, but let's take a look back into song mode, and we'll see that for both of our tracks, for the copper drum kit, which we downloaded, and for the soul keys, which came stock inside of Beatmaker 3, we've got ourselves 8-bar loops here. Now let's say you'd like to edit these, the MIDI notes per se that are inside of these loops. Let's say you wanted to, make some variations to the drum groove. You would highlight the drum groove and you would just click edit, and if we do some careful zooming here, there's our MIDI notes. And you would just, go in and you would adjust those notes, add new notes, copy this pattern, if you were back in song mode here, and start, arranging out the song. Same deal with the soul keys. If you wanted to, edit those, you would just highlight that and you would click edit. And there's the notes that we put in. Another option again, there's no way I would have been able to play that, live in real time. But if you remember, I was able to punch that in fact, live in real time using that ChordPolyPad. Wow, it's still playing them too. So yeah, using this app, you can really go through, guys, and what I'll do is when I'm studying chord progressions or whatnot, I'll just be entering stuff in here, and constantly, updating my library of, go-to. Because, I could never play this stuff live in real time. Give me a drum set, like, no problem. But these complicated soul keys, yeah, not so much. So I'd certainly recommend the ChordPolyPad for getting, nice chord progressions inside of Beatmaker 3, complicated MIDI notes that you can then, go through and edit, later. Another thing that is sort of, handy and something that I might, consider doing with something like this at this stage in the writing would be to, to render out those soul keys, as audio, and then, just chop those individual chords out and, load those chords back onto the same, these empty pads up here and continue building the track inside of one bank. That would be an option of something to do as well. A million ways to approach it at this point. You could, instead of using song mode, you could, take those patterns that we've, built, and you could start dropping them into scenes mode and start building a live jam. But I think we've covered a lot about, some writing techniques inside of Beatmaker 3 today. And luckily for us, we didn't have any crashes inside of the new version. This was really the first time that I sat down with it, so that was lucky. We didn't really try to do a lot with AU instruments or anything like that. I'm just trying to show you guys, just some of the techniques that can be done using some of the tools that we all have access to. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure and subscribe for more Beatmaker 3 shenanigans.
subscribe for more Beatmaker 3 shenanigans.